This time, only documents and only facts. Citizens of the court, I ask you to consider leniency in my punishment. This is a story, to atone for one's guilt through any effort. Don't take my wife away. The most notorious crimes of the Soviet era. Petrograd, 1918, Volodya and the devastation. People have weapons, but they don't have jobs. In the northern capital, there is a rampant banditry. Looters are robbing warehouses. Criminals are cleaning out apartments. The gangs of anarchists are conducting pogroms. The residents of Petrograd are terrified by the gangs of Chizov, Smordin, Kovalev, and Belyov, nicknamed Vanka Belka. In the early 1920s, the NKVD declared war on crime. Former employees of the Tsarist police are being reinstated into operational work. The 3rd Police Department of Petrograd is headed by the legendary detective Pavel Barzay.
In 1921, the commander of the 1st Brigade of Ugar, Sergei Kondratyev, assembles a unique team.
But even she can't do anything about the raider, whose name will forever go down in the history of criminology. This is house number 39 on Kazanskaya Street. Currently, there is a bar occupying one apartment here. In 1922, the entire 2nd floor was occupied by Furrier Bogashev. It was here that the bloody history of the gang began, led by the daring and desperate robber, Bartovy. On March 4th, around 3 p.m., 3 people entered the building entrance. They ascended the stairs and stopped at the door. Housekeeper Zina was cleaning when there was a knock at the door. "This is Vanya, Emilia's acquaintance. Open up." 3 people burst into the apartment. The leader pressed a gun to Zina's face. "So, bitch, where do the owners keep the money and jewelry?" Out of fear, the girl froze, and the bandit snapped. "You can't say we'll find them ourselves." Everything was over in a minute. The robbers left behind empty cabinets and shelves. Bandits stole furs and jewelry worth 30 billion rubles from the fur trader Bogachev's apartment. In current prices, it amounts to $100,000. Furs were tied into mails, and there were so many gold jewelry pieces that the raiders requisitioned a briefcase. The lucky one didn't trust anyone and personally took the suitcase outside. He appeared to be a successful doctor. They tied up the servant and went out through this main door. Here, the coachman was already expecting the raiders. Andrei Nikitin, writer, author of the book Petrograd Maze, has been studying the history of the criminal world of the northern capital for over 15 years. There is a wall square very close by. It's a notorious criminal area of St. Petersburg. The next robbery took place just 2 days later in the neighboring carpentry workshop. Following this, the raids began to occur weekly. The raiders acted quickly and skillfully. They knocked on the doors and introduced themselves as clients, couriers, or patients. The hosts opened the door, and uninvited guests brandished revolvers. Nowadays, most apartment burglaries are committed using this method, but the inventor of this method is rightfully Fartovi. A raider did not kill without reason, but if he sensed danger, he shot without hesitation. According to the most conservative estimates, during his first period, from March 4th to September 4th, he killed 12 people. Rostislav Lyubvin, senior researcher at the Museum of Police History, main directorate of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of St. Petersburg and the Leningrad region. The detectives were surprised. The robber knew exactly where and when he could get some. His gang always left the crime scene on time. It was as if someone from the NKVD was passing the most accurate information to Fartov. Secretly to the head of the Petrograd department of the GPU NKVD Messing, in order to verify operational information regarding the leak of internal data. They consider the creation of a special unit to inspect the employees of the central office of the Petrograd GPU to be extremely necessary. Head of the 3rd Police Department, Pavel Barzay. While composing this dispatch, Barzay never imagined that suspicion of treason would fall upon himself. Soviet Russia lived during the NEP era. As early as 1921, private enterprises and shops were permitted. At that time, it seemed like the only way out of the terrible poverty. But a few months after the beginning of the new economic policy, NEP, restaurants opened in the city. The audience was having fun, looking just like 2 drops of water, resembling previous bourgeoisie. They put into use the gold they had hidden away during the revolution. Working peasants looked with hatred at the defeated landlords. Welcome, hello. In the NEPA environment, greed was considered a vice. The businessmen deliberately squandered money in order to earn the respect of their colleagues. They lost huge sums gambling, ordered luxurious dishes and expensive drinks, and spent money on women. The life wasters dealt a monstrous blow to the noble ideals of the builders of socialism. This is a modern nightclub. Expensive interior, expensive drinks, expensive girls for wealthy gentlemen. Entertainment for every taste. Some dance, others play. Here, businessmen not only relax, but also discuss business matters. It is often in such places that useful connections are made and even major deals are closed. In the 1920s, during the NEP era, there were their own nightclubs. They were called dens. Pavel Barzay was a regular attendee of one of them. Barzay Pavel Kuzmik, a hereditary detective in the 3rd generation. Even before the revolution, he instilled fear in the bandits from Lugovka, went alone to steal from the thieves' markets, and knew the faces of the crime bosses by sight. After the theft of the state treasury van was uncovered, the Bolshevik expropriators were awarded the gratitude of Emperor Nicholas II. After the fall of the monarchy, Barzaya is transferred to work in the archive. But in 1922, former detectives of the Tsarist police were once again accepted into operational work. Then Barzaya is appointed head of the 3rd Police Department of Petrograd. Barzay, out of old habit, liked to appear in expensive establishments. Once this was reported to the GKU, the State Political Directorate, which replaced the Cheka. Supposedly, Barzay is introducing the idea of acquaintance with the ideological enemy. A surveillance was set up on the investigator. Afarova soon became brazen. She started visiting well-known houses and establishments. In the midst of the merriment, an unknown young man suddenly appeared in the crowd, elegantly dressed. He would stop the music and address those present with a brief speech. A moment of attention. This is a raid. I warmly welcome the guests. I kindly ask the hosts not to worry. I ask the gentlemen to free their pockets. Ladies, remove your earrings, brooches, and other shackles of capitalism. The detectives did not show much eagerness to catch the robber. since he was robbing Netmans and Puzatov. However, the Petrograd Chekists carried out a purge within their own ranks. Pavel Barzay spent days and nights in the office. I compared details of robberies and studied the habits of Afrodov. He was supposed to find him, or else the GPU would get to him himself. The detective created a verbal portrait of Artov. A small-height raider, slender, with dark hair and blue or light blue eyes. Ears protruding, prefers leather jackets or military trench coats and clothing. Fashionable caftans and high-quality chrome boots. But the robber with his accomplices is reticent in action. People who resembled the description of the bandit were stopped on the streets, but Afrodov was elusive. At the beginning of May 1922, Barzay was summoned for an interrogation at the GPU. He realized that it was the end. Among the people, the abbreviation GPU was interpreted in their own way. Lord, remember the departed. Few people returned from interrogations at the Political Department. On the evening before the interrogations at the Prosecutor General's office, Barzay took a raid on the city dens. 30 people participated in the operation. A squad of sailors was assigned to provide assistance, sort of an early 1920s omen. Modern intelligence agencies, when capturing fleeing bandits, they often use mass inspections, detentions, and searches. Oman riot police in masks storm saunas, restaurants, and nightclubs. They are laid on the floor by reputable businessmen to get rid of the intrusive attention of the police. They themselves find out where the fugitive is and hand him over. This is exactly how the notorious repeat robber was apprehended in our time. Andrei Antonov, who carried out a unique escape from prison, falling in love with a female guard. By 1922, this technique was already known. Militiamen conducted searches and detained well-known criminals. Barzay promised that the raids would continue until the robber is caught. The next day, the head of the 3rd Police Department was giving testimony at the GPU. The interrogation lasted 2 hours. However, contrary to expectations, Barzay was not arrested. The detective felt that it was only a delay. The criminals from St. Petersburg were alarmed. They didn't want to be responsible for the sins of an unknown intruder. There were dozens of professional criminals in the city with a solid pre-revolutionary background. People who have spent time in prison more than once under the Tsar father, who knew the entire criminal investigation department of Petrograd by their full names, and the appearance of this cheeky young man. They were met without any, so to speak, enthusiasm. That same evening, the thugs brought the frightened worker Paramanov to Barzay's office. He claimed that he saw Fartov a year ago during the raid. Only then did he have on a black leather jacket of a Cheka officer. Barzay did not expect such a turn of events. If he's a lucky secret agent, it won't be easy to get to him. According to the robbed NEP men, the artist made several sketches. The faces differed from each other. They all had protruding ears, close-set eyes, and wide nostrils. Barzay obtained permission to conduct an inspection of the employees of the transport department of the Cheka. He spent several days going through personal files. Dozens of faces flashed before my eyes. Dozens of different eyes, ears, and nose, and suddenly all 3 signs aligned. Now Barzay knew who Fartovi was. Leonid Panteleev, former investigator of the transport department of the Cheka Northwestern Railway. In January 2022, he was dismissed from the NKVD authorities and brought to trial for contact with counter-revolutionary elements. However, he was soon released. The reason for release was not indicated in the case materials. Already the next day, Petrograd newspapers published sensational headlines. The secret of Fartov is revealed. And a few days later, as if mocking the police, the robber publicly revealed his name. At last, the name of this daring raider became known. He believed so strongly in his impunity that he started leaving his business card at the crime scene. Leonid Panteleev, the free robber artist. And on the back, he wrote it himself in neat handwriting. An employee of criminal investigation with friendly protection, Leonid. The image of the elusive bandit was paid tribute to many years later in the TV series Born by the Revolution. The role of Panteleev was played by Leningrad actor Vladimir Dukov. His photograph accidentally caught the eye of the director and producer of this film. They saw a clear facial resemblance to Lenka Panteleev. They were specifically looking for an actor for this role in St. Petersburg. Vladimir Dukov is an honored artist of Russia. Performer of the role of Leonid Panteleev in the film series Born by the Revolution. And it was then that I was literally approved all at once. In the movies, the image of the famous robber is romanticized. In life, Lenka Panteleev was more arrogant, mean, and cynical, but that did not prevent him from becoming a national hero. Rumor has made the robber a knight who takes money from the rich and gives it to the poor. The knight of the Ligovskaya panel, what kind of damn knight is that? All these ostentatious gestures of throwing money around are, excuse me, just showiness. But that is not the essence of this person. He's not exactly Robin Hood, so to speak. This is the famous robber Sergei Maduev, nicknamed Chervonets, who lived 70 years after Panteleev. He was also considered to be such a Robin Hood. Maduev claimed that he never took the last of anything, and even shared with the needy. However, for some reason, he forgot how he had killed people. Once he set fire to the house where the infant was located. A child was burned alive. Maduev and Panteleev have a lot in common. Both loved fine suits, restaurants, and a polished appearance. Both were liked by women and shamelessly took advantage of it. But their life endings were completely different. After the identity of Fartov was established, all suspicions regarding Pavel Barzay were lifted. From now on, Pantelev's arrest has been closely pursued by the KU employees, as well as the Criminal Investigation Department, a special group created for the arrest of Fartov. Personally led one of the best detectives of that time, chief of the 1st Brigade of the Petrograd UGRO, Sergei Kondratiev. Sergei Kondratiev was born in 1898. He worked as a telegraphist before the revolution. He joined the party in 1919. 2 years later, he was assigned to work in criminal investigation. In just a few months, Kondratiev became a first-class investigator. In 1 year of work, his team eliminated 32 gangs. At the same time, the leader of the Petersburg Raiders was only 24 years old. Panteleev had no connections in the criminal world of Petrograd, but Kondratiev came up with a way to get to laziness through his women. The bandits' cohabiting partner was arrested, but they refused to help the police. The girls in love with Lenka preferred to stay in prison. But Panteleev was not surrendered. At that time, all the trams in Petrograd were made of wood. The new car was not being produced. The factories were idle. This tram, built in England in 1907, was nearing the end of its lifespan. The ticket cost a nickel in new money. Old 500, but many did not pay. On the same tram on June 16, 1922, Cheka Vasiliev was riding to work. He noticed two guys who were behaving arrogantly and brazenly. In one of them, Vasiliev immediately recognized the robber Lenka Panteleev. Vasiliev saw a photograph of Leonid Panteleev only once, but I remembered his face. In life, everything was not like in the movies. Initially, the bandit tried to quietly escape from Vasily, but the former Chekist was the first to draw his weapon. The tram was going at full speed, and I jumped out. Did you jump alone without a stuntman? Yes, I jumped out of the tram while it was moving at full speed. Lenka Panteleev ran out onto the Fontanka embankment. Vasiliev shot at him several times from there, but missed. At that moment, the head of security at the state bank, Shmutov, stepped out onto the street from the opposite side. Seeing the chase with gunfire, he ran straight at Lenka. It was right at this very spot Panteleev and Shmutov met. Panteleev shot excellently. Both bullets he fired hit the target. Shmutov died on the spot. Panteleev disappeared into the courtyards. Having killed Shmutov, Lenka became a sworn enemy of all Petrograd police officers. From now on, his life was worth not a single. A real hunt has begun for him. However, the loud fame of the #1 pilot played a cruel joke on the detectives. Now many gangs, committing crimes, were hiding behind his name. In the 1920s, gangs often adopted frightening names for themselves. Death 9, Bim Bomb, Hands on the Wall, Living Corpses. This was the name of the most unusual gang of that period. Robbers in white balaclavas appeared in dimly lit places. They moved on stilts or using springs on the soles of their shoes. That's why they were also called robbers. At noon on September 4th, 1922, Panteleev with his partner Gavrikov at the corner of Marine Street and Post Office Lane. They stole from the cooperative member Manilov a bag filled with money. After a successful robbery, Panteleev they headed out onto Nevsky Prospect and proceeded. The footwear store Kostresa, formerly. He was outside. Panteleev with his partner Gavrikov at the corner of Morskaya Street and headed towards the shoe store Kostresa, formerly Bandit. He was over there. Panteleev was probably planning to buy himself fashionable shoes. In the well-known Russian proverb, it is said that and on the patrol, there are gravel chips. The thing is, at that very moment, I was buying Sam, head of the 3rd Department of Petrograd militia. He had long dreamed of meeting Tartov, my former colleague. Pavel Barzay searched for Panteleev for half a year, but I never thought I would encounter a robber by chance. Entering shoe store. And didn't expect the meeting to end so quickly. Wounded by a bandit's bullet, Pavel Barzay. The workers passing by of the UGRD heard the gunshots. Among them was Sergei Kondratev himself, as well as the legendary St. Petersburg detective. Militiamen stormed into the store. A shootout ensued. Panteleev decided to go straight ahead. He grabbed a large wooden wedge. He knocked out that window for them and ran out onto the street. Detective Ivan Modnov caught up with Lenka. A blow to the head knocked out the thug. Kondratev snapped handcuffs onto his wrists. At that time, no one suspected. The history of the gang is far from over. Pavel Barzay never found out about the capture of Fartovi. An hour later, the head of the 3rd Police Department died at the Stables Hospital. Sergei Kondratev interrogated Panteleev. He was silent at first, but then unexpectedly shared his story. Lenka Panteleev, his real name is Leonid Panteleev. He was born in 1902 into a working-class family. Graduated from school with a commendation. I worked as a typesetter at. He was well educated because he read a lot. Panteleev welcomed the revolution with joy. Signed up to the Red Guard and ended up on the front lines. He was in German captivity but successfully escaped. He distinguished himself in the battles against like a fiery defender of the revolution. Panteleev is being transferred directly from the front to a special Red Cross unit. A young Chekist was confiscating bread from the gulag. Arrested and executed the enemies of the revolution. His zeal was appreciated. Panteleev was appointed as an operative officer and then transferred to Petrograd. At that moment, he was only 18 years old. It was then that Lenka changed his surname to a more euphonious one, Panteleev. The time of the new economic policy has come. Panteleev looked on helplessly, grinding his teeth. How well-fed young men take young women to English suits, silk shirts, pointed toe shoes. The entire appearance of the Nepins provoked uncontrollable rage in Lenka.
The secret agent's salary was small. Inflation over the month reduced her to mere The money was worth absolutely nothing. People received money in rolls, like wallpaper, and carried these rolls of a box of matches, if I remember correctly, cost almost 200,000. One day in the Kostroma beer hall, Lenka met the scavenger Krednov. He suggested earning some extra money by escorting him to the border with the goods. That's how Panteleev began helping criminals. He has gained money and a taste for the sweet life. But the comrade quickly saw through the double dealer. Panteleev served 3 months in prison. For some reason, he wasn't executed, only dismissed from the authorities. They threw him out onto the street like a misbehaving kitten. He could not endure such humiliation. After gaining freedom, the former Chekist assembled his own gang. Panteleev just robbed jeweler Wanikin. After the fight at the shoe store in Koshirsk, it seemed that the story of the elusive bandit and his gang was over. Panteleeva and Gavrikova are bringing them here, to the 3rd Penal Colony, better known as the Kresty Detention Center. Soon, other members of the gang will be arrested. 2 months were spent preparing for the trial of Panteleev. On November 10, 1922, the Gubensky court sentenced the robber and murderer to execution by firing squad. On November 11th, St. Petersburg newspapers published reports about the court session. The whole city is holding its breath in anticipation. Could it really be satisfactory? Did it turn away from the lucky one? Lenka didn't have time to think about luck. He had a very restless night. He wanted to read the city newspapers behind the walls of the crosses. During the night, the lights suddenly went out throughout the Panteleev and his accomplices, Gavrikov, also known as Gavrush, Rayton, also known as Sashka Pan, and Lesenkov, also known Rayton, also known as Sashka Pan, and Lesenkov, also known as Mishka Kurgavi, have come out of the cells. They calmly descended from the 4th floor and passed through the main post. In the dating room, the bandits broke the window. Panteleev's clever plan was coming to fruition, but the main obstacle remained: the wall. The escape happened on the day of the police. It was a kind of gift from Leonid Panteleev, a former secret police officer, to all Petrograd police. And this was the only successful victory in the entire history of the crosses. Bandit Sergei Maduev, who, like Panteleev, was known as a noble robber, who was imprisoned in the Petersburg prisons, also faced the death penalty. On May 3, 1991, Madueva was taken out for a walk. Unexpectedly for the guards, he drew in the gun and opened fire. An officer of the Internal Service was seriously wounded, but he escaped. The investigation has stopped. The weapon was handed over to Maduev in the camera by Vorontsova, the investigator for especially important. An older, lonely woman became a victim of the criminal's devilish charm. Unlike Maduev, Panteleeva was released by a security guard for money. In the film Born a Revolution, this escape was given a political undertone. Supposedly, the overseer was a secret enemy of Soviet authority. By noon on November 11th, everyone in Petrograd already knew Vertovy was free again. Sergei Kondratev, the commander of the 1st Brigade of Petrograd UGRU, was furious. What was he staying away for? What was he risking his life for during Panteleev's arrest? What was the reason behind the death of the remarkable detective Pavel Barzay? After escaping from the crosses, Panteleev seemed to become feral. The jokes are over. Now he robbed everyone indiscriminately and shot without 10 murders, about 20 street robberies, and 15 armed assaults. This was the first month of freedom. Cocaine addict, junkie, drug addict, alcoholic, he started drinking heavily and using drugs. He was already practically an uncontrollable person. Finally, Panteleev decided to make his way into Estonia. But you shouldn't go abroad empty-handed. Lenka started hiding the stolen goods. This is the Ligovsky catacombs, a tangled underground maze that emerged in the 18th to 19th centuries. Cellars, basements, tunnels. They say that Lenka Panteleev brought valuables. It was here that the divers made an incredible discovery. Items belonging to the very place where the local thief gangs hid their loot were found.
Vasily Kravchenko, speleologist, participant in scientific expeditions, industrial climber. In his free time, he engages in treasure hunting. We found several coins, silver forks and spoons, bracelets, and items used by thieves. Exactly at the time when Lenka Panteleev was reigning here. Gold and jewelry were not found in Melina, but we found a set of thieves' tools, shims, crowbars, and lockpicks. A metal detector went off. We were hoping to find something bigger. Does Panteleev's treasure exist? Most likely, yes. But in 1924, the city experienced the worst flood. It could have carried away the treasures and money hidden by Lenka to the most remote backwaters. It will take more than a year to explore the entire dark dungeon. We continue working here. The treasure hasn't been found yet, but it's still ahead. On November 20th, 1922, at the Marsovo field, Panteleev and his accomplice Belov robbed 3 passengers of a carriage. A police patrol noticed the pilots. They opened fire on the bandits. Lenka tried to leave on the flights, but one of the horses was found dead. Having been shot in the back, Lenka's partner Belov fell dead. Panteleev, after running about 200 meters, jumped into the passing tram. The police officers rushed after the train, but heavy footwear and uncomfortable clothing hindered their running. It was forbidden to shoot. There were other passengers in the carriage. In the backyard, Panteleev waved his hand to the police officers. There were watches seized from passengers of the flight in it. Then he didn't know that his own chronometer had already begun the countdown. In 1922, a Grossisk organized courses for beginners. We studied all types of crimes, fingerprint analysis, arrest methods, searches, verbal profiling, jiu-jitsu, and boxing. The commander of the 1st Brigade of the Petrograd UGRO, Sergei Kondratiev, personally selected the most talented students. A special assault brigade was created from them. Her only task was to find and eliminate Panteleev. On December 13th, Lenka, along with 2 accomplices, decided to celebrate another robbery. And I booked a table at the luxurious Japanese restaurant Danin, which was just located in this house on Rekamaya Embankment, House 24. A meter from the hotel, he recognized the legendary Bandit and called the police. The film Born Revolutionaries claims that Panteleev was shot in the Danon restaurant hall. Everything in life was not like that. Lenka left the restaurant alive. The shootout killed his accomplice Varshilovich. Panteleev and Gavrikov slipped out through the back door and ran in different directions. Gavrikov was caught at the Nevsky railway crossing by mounted police. Later, he faced trial and execution. Panteleev then ran across the Mars field. A well-trained athlete crosses Marsovo field in about 2 minutes. Lenka Panteleev, wounded in the arm, traveled this route much faster. He ran past the engineering castle, climbed over the fence near the Panteleimonovskaya church, and hid there. In 10 minutes, threat investigation agents with a bloodhound arrived at the scene. The dog got on its legs and stood up. In 10 minutes, threat investigation agents with a bloodhound arrived at the scene. The dog picked up the trail and led them to Mars Field. Beyond that, the trail was lost. Agents randomly walked along Panteleimonovskaya Street, now Pestel Street. We passed by the church and didn't notice the bandit lying there under the fence. Sergei Kondratiev continued the hunt for Panteleev. Rumors about the relentless detective reached Vartovy as well. Lenka decided to deal with Kondratiev and went to his house. The detective's wife, Maria, opened the door. Panteleev introduced himself as Sergei's colleague. The hostess was friendly. She offered tea, but the guest declined. The time seemed to stretch endlessly. Kondratiev did not return. Finally, Lenka couldn't stand it anymore and left, not harming the enemy's wife. A bandit liked to repeat, "I don't fight with women." Kondratiev immediately guessed who exactly paid him a visit. The detective intensified his efforts, as the lives of his loved ones were at stake. This is house number 38 on Mozhaiskaya Street.
In 1923, a promiscuous girl named Mitskovich lived here. On the night of February 13th, Lenka Panteleev and his friend Lysenkov, they came here hoping to have a good rest. Panteleev opened the front door and singing something lively. I burst into the hallway and immediately felt that there was an ambush in the apartment. There are many inconsistencies and oddities in the story of the famous robber. In 1921, Cheka officer Leonid Panteleev was caught red-handed transporting stolen goods, but he was not shot. For some reason, they let him go. And then the raids on Nepman apartments began, based on remarkably accurate hints. Why did Panteleev not attack government offices? Why did he boast about his name in front of the victims? Finally, how did he manage to escape from the impregnable crosses? Only one version provides answers to all these questions. According to her, Panteleev was deeply an undercover police officer, or GPU agent, who was integrated into the Petrograd criminal world. Former accomplices of Panteleeva noted he never carried any large sums of money or valuables with him. Perhaps he was turning over the stolen goods to his native agency. According to this version, Panteleev once lost control, and from that moment became the target of a major hunt. Angry and resentful, he began to play for himself, according to their own rules. This game brought him to the night of February 13th at house number 38, along Mozhaiskaya Street. Miss Mikovich openly responded upon hearing the knock at the door. Panteleev started singing something lively and burst into the hallway. The bear left a crooked trail behind, and then, out of the semi-darkness, Chekist Ivan Bushko stepped forward to meet them. 3 soldiers were standing behind him. Panteleev tried to grab the revolver, but he caught on to the clothing and fired a shot. At that very moment, Bushko shot Panteleev point blank. In the morning, a small note appeared in the Petrograd newspapers. After a long search, the notorious bandit Leonid Panteleev was captured by the nickname Lenka Panteleev. During the arrest, the criminal offered a desperately armed resistance, during which he was killed. Chekists and bandits, NEP men and workers, they didn't believe in the death of the elusive Barzay. And then the authorities took extreme measures. Panteleev's body was displayed for public viewing at the morgue of Obukovo Hospital, and the robber's head was cut off and displayed in the shop window on Nevsky. For a long time, its whereabouts were considered a secret. Today, this secret has been revealed. Here is what remains of the once famous gangster. And the raider Lenka Panteleeva. The right eye is visible with a bruise in the area of the upper eyelid. Obviously, this is the result of his last fight. By a miracle, this exhibit was preserved. Now, Vadim Petrov is watching over him, professor at St. Petersburg University. Lenka Panteleeva's terrifying grin still sends shivers down the spine today, like in those distant 1920s. Sic transit, glory to the world. As the ancients said, worldly fame passes away. In Lenka Panteleeva's fate, there are many dark spots and inconsistencies. It was said that he was raised by the Chekists. He was dismissed from the authorities and released into the criminal world. A secret mission to fix all the Petersburg gangs, but got out of control. They said that it was not him who was killed here, on Mozhaiskaya Street. They claimed that the real Lenka went abroad and lived there for many years. All of this is not surprising. Being a legend in his lifetime, he continues to amaze even after his death. Rather, his name, which is being filled with new facts and conjectures. Panteleev was the last bandit of the 1920s, instilling fear throughout all of Petrograd. After Lenka's defeat, the wave of banditry began to decline. Now, the legendary raider is almost forgotten. They only occasionally hum the words of an old song. Lenka Panteleev, terror of detectives. A bracelet on the wrist, blue eyes,
Subtitle editor A. Sinetskaya. Proofreader A. Egorova.